Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another of the Founder Series. My name is Olufemi Oderinlo. I'm a retina specialist with Eye Foundation Hospital, and I'd like to welcome everyone and appreciate you for spending your precious Saturday afternoon with us. I would like to welcome you again, and this is the 14th in the series of lectures that we call the Founder Series. It was instituted and it's been coordinated by the Kunle Hassan Eye Foundation Academy. The theme is based around leadership and influence, and today Dr. Ogunro will be speaking to us about influencing the next generation through skill transfer. Immediately after my welcome, Dr. Harman will properly introduce Dr. Ogunro. So we would like you, as much as possible while you're not talking, to please put off your microphones and your cameras so that we can reduce the distraction during the session. The agenda for today is shown right now on the screen, and I'll tell you a little bit about Eye Foundation. Eye Foundation was established in 1993 as a single clinic in Ikoyi by our chairman, Dr. Adekunle Olubola Hassan. The vision of Eye Foundation is to eliminate avoidable blindness through the provision of equitable, qualitative, quantitative, and affordable eye care to all. The Eye Foundation Hospital itself is a private hospital. However, we have different other subsidiaries that do a lot more work in the public space. The Eye Foundation Center for Prevention of Blindness was established in 1995, and it was the second immediate precursor of KEFA. The immediate precursor of KEFA is the Eye Foundation Community Hospital, which was Eye Foundation Community, which was established in 2006 as a social enterprise arm of the Eye Foundation Hospital Group. The Kunle Hassan Eye Foundation Academy is now previously known as the Deseret Community Vision Institute, is now the one responsible for overseeing the training of residents, fellows, mid-level ophthalmic practitioners, optometrists, and ophthalmic nurses, and also the one that is presently involved with the planning of the Founder Series. We've had 14 lectures in this series. The first one was using Eye Foundation Hospital as a group, as a case study. The second one was meeting the challenges of a startup in ophthalmology practice. The third, we spoke about building a crisis-resistant culture in an ophthalmic institution amidst a disruptive VUCA environment. Lecture 4 was the role of core values in shaping employee behavior for organizational effectiveness. And lecture 5 was the political economy of eye health in sub-Saharan Africa. And lecture 6 was professional politics and eye care development. These lectures were taken by Dr. A.O. Hassan, and subsequently we began to get other erudite scholars to share their experience with us. In the 7th lecture, we had strategic partnerships in health. In the 8th lecture, we had bridging the gap in human resources and skill in eye care. 9th lecture, the future of eye care in a post-COVID pandemic environment. The 10th was take a stand and dare to be different. The challenges of running a healthcare institution in the new era, leadership fundamentals and leadership. And lecture 13 was I Give, identity, growth, impact, and voice engagement. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to another lecture. Not to waste your time any further, please allow me to hand over to the director of the Kunle Hassan Eye Foundation Academy, Dr. Ayo Harima.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oderinlo. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I welcome you this afternoon. I'm going to introduce Dr. Adeola Ogunro. She's a consultant ophthalmic surgeon and also a glaucoma specialist. She was the past vice president of the Glaucoma Society of Nigeria. She qualified as a medical doctor from the University College Hospital, University of Ibadan in 1986 and commenced her residency training at the Ogun State University Teaching Hospital, which is now known as the Olabisi Onabanjo University Teaching Hospital. So she commenced her residency there in 1993 and became a fellow of the West African College of Surgeons in 1999. She also holds an MBA from the University of Cumbria, UK, and that she obtained in 2021. Dr. Ogunro joined the Eye Foundation team in 1999 as a fellow in the James Standiford Glaucoma Institute. She's been a recipient of AFA-AVO. AFA standing for the Association for Research in Vision and Ophthalmology Foundation for Eye Research. AVO stands for the Association for Research in Vision and Ophthalmology. But AFA, I repeat, stands for the AVO Foundation for Eye Research. So she got an award for this in 2008 and went for a glaucoma fellowship observership training at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary in 2011. She's the current medical director of the Eye Foundation Hospital, Lekki Providence branch, and is also the director for clinical services for the Eye Foundation Hospital Group. She's also a faculty at the Kunle Hassan Eye Foundation Academy. She's a very proficient glaucoma and cataract surgeon with extensive experience in laser procedures for glaucoma management. She's also been involved in different research topics on OCT, which is optical coherence tomograph, parameters in glaucoma patients. Her research interest has also been in lasers in glaucoma surgery and microinvasive glaucoma surgery. She has presented many scientific papers, both internationally and locally, and has successfully headed 3 editions of the Eye Foundation International Glaucoma Symposium. She's a member of the American Academy of Ophthalmology, the Ophthalmological Society of Nigeria, and is also a founding member of the Glaucoma Society of Nigeria. So this afternoon, Dr. Ogunro is going to talk to us about influencing the next generation through skills transfer. So thank you very much. And Dr. Ogunro, we now welcome you to give your lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Harriman. Thank you, everyone. I want to welcome everybody. I also want to thank the chairman of the Eye Foundation Hospital Group and the leadership of the Kunle Hassan Eye Foundation Academy for allowing me to give this topic to talk on the influencing the next generation through skill transfer. I want to welcome everyone this afternoon, and I hope we will have a good discussion together. Thank you. You are welcome. Learning objectives for this topic will be to define generational characteristics and give understanding of different generations, to review generational characteristics which may impact learning environment, and to identify costs to facilitating effective teaching and learning in skills transfer. As definition, generation is defined as a cross-section of people born around the same time that span about 20 years. Their lives have been shaped by historical and critical life events. And a skill is a type of work or activity which requires special training and knowledge. A skill could be a hard skill or soft skill. And hard skills are referred to as teachable skills or job-specific abilities that can be quantified or measured, while the soft skills are referred to as an individual's social ability or how they relate to and interact with other people. Examples of hard skills could be language knowledge, degrees, apprenticeship or certificates, attainment or accounting, typing techniques, machine operation, programming, languages, software knowledge like Microsoft. And soft skills are character traits, personal or interpersonal skills. And these include communication skills, flexibility, self-discipline, self-reflection, teamwork, time management, empathy, ability to take criticism. Now, the generations that we've had over years could be in 6 to 7 groups. And the first is the greatest generation. These are people that are born between 1901 to 1927. The silent generation were born between 1928 and 1945. The baby boomers are born between 1946 to 1964. The Generation X were born between 1965 to 1980. The millennials, or the Generation Y, were born between 1981 to 1996. Generation Z were born between 1997 to present. And we have the Generation Alpha that are starting in the 2010s. These are not in the workforce presently. Now I'll use the US to just present some of the events or historical events that actually shaped this generation. Using US is because United States is a pace setter and they somehow determine the economy of the world, as well as to some extent the cultural effects of US also affects the world to some extent. And this slide shows some of the historical events that actually shaped the world. The Second World War, the 9/11, and also presently that we still have the COVID-19. Now they talk about the characteristics of the different generation. The greatest generation that are the people born between 1901 and 1927 actually gave back to the baby boomers and the grandparents of the Generation X and the millennials. They raised families to value hard work. They knew about loss and hard times because of their experience during the Second World War. Their realistic and pragmatic ways of living greatly influenced their parenting style. They produced very large families and had to make ends meet and support multiple children. They had the skills to survive and prosper, and that messaging was greatly emphasize to their children. The silent generation parented quietly without doing anything that called attention to them. They kept their heads down and did what they had to do. Many of the silent raised their children to be seen and not heard, especially the women. They were only allowed or trained to speak when they're asked to speak or when they're called to speak. They had a high regard for communication, teamwork, and collaboration. They were known for working within system rather than fighting the system. They had the spirit of never give up. The baby boomers were those that were born after the World War. So they had high standards of living. They had higher education standards. They were given into civil rights movements as well. They were the parents of the Gen X and the millennials. They increased in birth rate because they were just at peace and at ease. It was a time of affluence. They focused on wanting the best for and making sure their children had best education. They had similar parenting styles to the silent generation, and they cared about the perspective of how kids felt growing up. They were optimistic, ambitious generation, and are determined to work hard like their parents. The Generation X were born between the 1965, and they were actually shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the music TV culture, the rise of the video games and the personal computers, Title IX and rise of girls' sports, and there were many heroes of 9/11. The rise in the internet and the dot-com bubble, which witnessed fall in the market shares. The Generation X focused on learning about parenting and caring about work-life balance. They understand the importance of individualizing and tend to support their children's choices for different lifestyles more than past generations. They are a generation of volunteers and are involved in their kids' development. This generation also gave rise to the period that we have parents, teachers, associations in the universities. Their skepticism of authority and focus on the value of working smarter, not harder. Many are entrepreneurs. They are quick to adapt and have a strong understanding of technology and quite undeserving of the bad reputation given by their boomer parents. The millennial or the Generation Y were shaped by the childhood that is always with internet, the regular presence of cell phones, the rise of social media, the Great Recession, and COVID-19 pandemic. The millennials had fewer children and are less likely to feel the need to be married to have kids. Technology, the internet, the social media are all major influencers in their lives as parents and in the lives of their children. They are open-minded generation of parents who are parenting in various styles that were not common to generations before them. They are naturally freer parents in approach compared to the older generations. They are demanding and expecting, although they are the most inclusive. They are tech-savvy and resilient generation in comparison to the generations before them. They are mostly educated and believe in teamwork and flexible work environment. Generation Z, or the Zoomers or iGen, or the post-millennials, They are shaped by the ever-present internet. They never knew a life without cell phones and digital media. They are also shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic and also witness young people as activists. They are exceptionally tech-savvy and generally have higher expectations for their employers in terms of workplace accommodations and social advocacy. The generation Alpha is just starting from 2010s, and this is the first generation to be born entirely in 21st century. They are not yet in the workforce. The next generation are guided to be world changers and to be absolutely best they can be. Most wealthy and influential generation is the baby boomers generation. We go ahead to look at the cultural variables by generation. In terms of the digital platform, we find out that the millennials are very active on the digital platforms, followed by the Generation Z, equally as the Generation X. And in the film and TV industry, the Generation X topped the list. In books, the baby boomers top the list, and in sports, equally you have the baby boomers and the millennials. In the art industry, you have the baby boomers and the celebrities, majority of them belong to the millennials, the millennials. And in the music and radio industry, you have the millennials as well as the Generation X. In the press and news media, the millennials top the list. Now, this will actually show us the values of each generation. And as we see the values of each generation, you will know what kind of value a generation will bring to the sandbox. And you have the life motto of the silent generation, never give up. The baby boomers always work hard. The Generation X work hard and play hard. The millennials will say, I need it now. And the Generation Z will say, I'll find it somewhere else. In terms of the values, the silent generation will talk about communication, teamwork, and collaboration. The baby boomers believe in competition, discipline, and teamwork. The Generation X believe in creativity, maintaining a work-life balance. And the Y generation, flexibility, collaboration, and inclusivity. The Generation X are flexible and are interested in technology. In terms of work ethics, we talked about generation, the silent generation. They are determined to get the job done. The baby boomers will continue working to save for retirement. The Generation X works smarter, not harder. And the millennials believe they will work hard as long as the needs are met. The Z generation will work hard as long as they can do it from home. In terms of technology, X generation do not have experience. Baby boomers have moderate experience in technology. Generation X are proficient and millennials are excellent, while the Generation Z are masters in technology. In terms of view of authority, silent generation respect authority. Baby boomers endure them. The Generation X ignore them. Millennials choose them. And the Generation Z do not trust them. In terms of communication, the silent generation and baby boomers prefer the in-person communication. Generation X and the millennials prefer the emails, and the Generation Z prefer online chatting. The percentage of people we have in the workforce, the silent generation are about 2%, and they are declining, while the baby boomers about 29%, they are declining. The Generation X, about 34%, they are declining too, and the millennials are growing. We have 34% in the workforce, and the Generation Z are growing just about 2%. And in terms of the preferred communication, the Z generation also prefer to keep it short, online only. The millennials, interactive, online communication. The Generation X will prefer the emails and just keep it real. And the valuable rewards, they will depend, the silent generation depends on salary increase, title change. In terms of rewards, the baby boomers prefer position or a secluded corner office, while the Generation X prefer freedom to work how I please. The millennials prefer continued education and be flexible at work. The Generation Z prefer to work and how I want it and from where I want to work. In terms of feedback, the silent generation prefer the feedback annually in person. Baby boomers prefer the annually feedback in person. The Generation X prefer the quarterly in person or online. Millennials prefer constantly giving them feedback in person or online. And the Generation Z also prefer constantly feedback and online only. The baby boomers, in terms of, they are in love with technical data, evidence-based, while the Generation X prefer visual examples and demonstration. The Generation Y prefer the online, hands-on and learning and participating. The typical leadership style for the boomers, they are control thinkers, while the Generation X are coordination doers, and Generation Y prefer the consensus that people will have. Now the question is, where do you belong? We talked about the different generations. These generations are not fixed. There could be overlap in characters or at the beginning or tail end of a particular generation. So it's like a dynamic thing, and that is why it's important that we talk about the generation in terms of the birth year rather than talking about the age, because the age is dynamic and it will be different. The other question is, should intergenerational differences between a learner and a teacher be obstacles to learning? We'll see this as we go on. Now we know that for everyone that is developing a skill or learning a skill, the person is mostly, we are talking about adults. And the way we teach adults or adults learn is different from the way children that children learn. Children will learn with leading, and they do not have any experience. They just want to absorb whatever you give them. They want to learn whatever you give them because it is new to them. But as an adult, which we, the way they learn, which is termed andragogy. It's the art of science, it's the art and science of helping adults to learn. And this was actually introduced to American culture in 1967 by Dusan Savicevic, who was a Yugoslavian adult educator. And he claimed that it is better to focus on the general attributes of how adults learn. These attributes are not individualized, but general to adults. And these attributes include the need to learn, motivation, orientation, self-direction, experience, and readiness. Null's concept actually introduced this and talked more on needs in terms of need to know. Need to know, an adult wants to know what you want to teach me. How do you want to teach? What do I gain from learning this thing? And there is a self-concept to it because adults are self-directed. They are independent. They like to find their own way, can make their own decisions, want to manage their own learning. Adults are ready to learn when they find out that what they want to learn is relevant in a real-to-life context to them. They are focused and they want to use the knowledge immediately. They want to see the value in meaningful learning experiences. And they need a clear why and what for learning goals. Motivation, in terms of motivation, adults are intrinsically motivated by various value drivers, not just in terms of money, but they are also motivated by job satisfaction, self-esteem, quality of life, personal growth, and development. Adults are engaged by learning that is problem-centered and practical in terms of orientation. They are practical and learning should apply to their lives or job, and they want to be involved in planning their learning. They want to focus on aspects that are most useful to them. In terms of experience, because adults have breadth and depth of experience, and they want to draw that on that experience so that others too can learn from them. So they have diverse knowledge and may have ideas about things, and they want to put these ideas into use. They use problem solving, critical reflection, and reasoning skills in learning. So we can see these basic pillars that are so important in adult learning, which when planning for any skill transfer, one should put into consideration. So the art of skill transfer, the key to an effective skill transfer is that the individual transferring the skill needs to understand and be able to translate this particular skill. And in understanding, it is important that this person must be certified, this person they must be accredited. And this is why even as a professional, you have professional bodies that will accredit whether a center or an individual to be able to, or a group of people to be able to carry out the skill transfers. The method of see one, do one, and teach one is very important because it allows critical thinking. When an adult is going to learn, he wants to observe. And this, at the period of observation, there are many things that it takes into consideration. How it's done, what is done, the end result, the method, and the technique the principles. And this gears up the critical thinking in an individual. As the person understands, he goes ahead to do it. When you do it, and you do it many times, it goes on to teach another person from experience. And this cycle goes on. In the medical profession, in the technical profession, in the engineering profession, this see one, do one, teach one is very, very effective. So the second thing is to explain. No matter what your job role is, everyone will perform at least one skill transfer. So communication is so vital that we cannot downplay it. And even comfortable learning environment is important. When we talk of environment, we are talking about how an individual will be able to practice and improve without being inhibited by fear of making mistakes or being jittery by fear of being intimidated. There is also the need to know this individual, it has to be explained at the beginning of each session, what you are training, why it is important, and tie it back to the business need and how you will be training it. And we can see here the training sessions that are being carried out for the people in outreach, for the people in the clinical section as well. Third level is the demonstration. Without the demonstration, the person learning the new skill won't see how it's done. This could be project-based, like we have in some of the GDD training, the preceptorship training. It could be a peer-to-peer discussion that, you know, mates will discuss. You have this in residence, among residents, among colleagues that work, and point and counterpoints where everyone will make a decision going against and discussing about each outcome. We're still talking about the art of skill transfer, which is usually when it's problem-based, you know, will help an adult to learn faster and to be able to put it to use immediately. This is a picture of the preceptorship program that was done in Retina, which involves just a small group of 5 learners. Number 4 is the practice with coaching. Practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. And this brings to using your own demonstration as a guideline. The important thing to remember here is to be active in providing positive and constructive feedback each and every time the learner practices. And we can see the observation and the coaching in the picture where a learner was having a wet lab and is being it's being watched how she was doing it, whether she was doing it well. Now, talking about task-oriented training or learning, it's important. It could be in terms of role plays where you have the wet lab or dry labs, where you have simulations, where you have practice demonstration, and other activities that the learner and the teachers will be involved in. To the right is a demonstration, and to the left is a wet lab. The dry labs could be in engineering or in the scientific laboratories. It could also be auditory, it will involve auditory task-oriented activities where you have lectures, group discussions, informal conversations, brainstorming sessions, stories and examples that are being given by participants. Visuals are very important. They know that there are generations that are they are captivated by what they see. And we can have this in the earlier days, transparencies, PowerPoint slides, videos, flip charts, and demonstrations as well, which will make what they see last with them for a long time. Number 5 is to observe. We talked about the observation. And once you feel the other person has gotten used to the new skill, that is the learner, you let the learner run through a demonstration of the skill on their own and be sure to highlight all the things they did well. Don't focus on the errors. Here we have observation and we have the others that are already doing the surgeries on their own, practicing, and also other peer discussions going on. Number 6 is the feedback and accountability. The feedback may be motivational, appreciative, constructive, and it's important to let the learners know the good things they are doing, the things they need to improve on, and to pass along encouragement to make sure they understand the skill completely. At each step, it is also critical to hold accountable for perfection. You give them the steps and set your expectations, and they must maintain them. To the right is the assessment rubrics for a surgery. We have for GDD, we have for trabeculectomy, for cataracts, and these are tools that are used in holding the person accountable, seeing how it is done, to whether the learner is meeting expectations or not at each level. Now, collaboration is important because it helps to widen your horizon. It helps to increase knowledge, share knowledge with other people of different communities, and one will know how it is done in other parts of the world. We have here the site for Africa and also the collaboration with the He Vision Institute, China. Other ways of learning the adults include the symposium. This is just an example of the International Symposium in glaucoma. And then creating inclusive learning environment to effect reflection is very important. And for this, it's important to provide a clear direction and structure where you have the vision stated clearly and also the mission stated clearly, so that you set expectation for success and how you want the team to function. It's important that a role model, to be a role model, because whatever you do, people are watching. The younger ones are watching. Whether you are doing it badly or you are good at it. And what you model to them is what they see. And also to be a good coach and a mentor. You must have a framework for the work and emphasize purposeful learning, service of excellent patient care. It's important to engage and provide feedback in real time in a safe environment. Now, having acquired hard skills, the soft skills are equally important. Without these soft skills, there is no good success. And these are the character traits and the personal or interpersonal skills, including communication skills, as mentioned earlier on, teamwork, time management, empathy, flexibility, and ability to take criticism from others and realign yourself to the right direction. Now we can see in iFoundation, as new people, as younger generations are coming in, you know already what they have, and you want to know their own characters and how they're going to influence your sandbox, whether your office, whether your organization, or your system. And when you have this, an individual that has the hard skills, you must ensure that the soft skills are also there. In case they do not have these soft skills, as we can see in the characteristics of the generations that we mentioned earlier on, we saw that the soft skills were more with the older generations. And this calls for you having your core values. This calls for you training people that are coming into your system. And as you train people that come into your system, making them to be able to align into the culture of your system, then the system will be able, everyone will be able to relate well, no matter the generation it may be, and there will be unity, and there will be success in purpose and achievement of goals. So in iFoundation, we have the core values, what we call the core values, and these are being taught to everybody, whether you are coming in and even the older generations. And this include accountability, resourcefulness, ethics, flexibility, respectful engagement, empathy. And we can see that even as an organization, if you liken an organization to an iceberg, what you see is just a little, is minute to what is actually below the sea level when it comes to iceberg. And at what you see include the behaviors, the systems, the processes, the policies. And at the inner level, what you don't see, the ideals, the goals, the values, the aspirations of people in this organization. And then deeper down in the sea, where you don't even see or no one sees, is what we believe. And that comes with, in any organization, the underlying assumptions. Those are silent, those are quiet, and those are the things that they are not visible, and they are found in the foundation and in the foundation and in the founder of an organization. And that is what makes the thing solid. When what you believe is strong and you can hold on to what you believe no matter what, then you will be able to continue to focus on the goals and the values and aspiration and the ideals, and then you'll be able to set and fashion the processes and will be able, and the policies. This will actually result in growth, as we can see even in iFoundation. Growth in people, growth in the organization, growth numerically and in skills and in everything you may think of. And then we can see, as in summary, that the effect of intergenerational differences can be positive in any organization if diversity is seen as assets, creating shared expectation where there is confidence in the voices. Everyone can have a voice, and inviting participation where you listen to people and people are welcome and there is an orientation towards continuous learning. There is no end to learning. And that is when somebody stops learning, that means the person is going to be cut off or there's stagnancy. But where there is continuous learning because of being interested in the trainings, you are compassionate about their lives, you know, those are soft spots. And psychologically, it will affect the learners. When you are involved, you know, and listen to them and you appreciate them, just thank you, and also checking in on what they are doing, checking in on their progress and mentoring them. And this will go a long way on transferring skills. Because if psychologically the person is, the learner is not comfortable, the learner will not be able to appreciate even the conducive environment that is being provided. So also, this learner will be able to respond positively to the environment. Teaching professionalism requires role modeling. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Your actions speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you are saying." You are always a role model, you like it or not. And people are watching as a role model. So we can say it's also important to create intergenerational network. When you have intergenerational network, you'll be able to discuss, you'll be able to share knowledge, you'll be able to see how you move forward. And a role model, I will want to appreciate Dr. Kule Hassan. He has been a role model, he's been a coach, and he's been a mentor, even in this generation and the generations to come and the past generation. So I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Ogunro. It wasn't an easy topic, and it has helped me as a person to understand why the generation that is now behaves the way they do. So, and I'm sure we have many teachers attending this lecture. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Odemilo to take your questions, and if you have any discussions, to put your hands up, and you can easily contribute. Thank you very much, Dr. Ogunro.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harriman, and let me say a big thank you to Dr. Ogunro for doing justice to the lecture. You know, sometimes when you see some topics, you're asking yourself, if they gave me such topic, what will I say? I think she has really done such a good work, and I always appreciate her. So can we have our questions? If you have any question, please raise up your hand and let's know. Please feel free to ask questions.
There are also comments in the chat box as well.
Okay, let me see that.
And Dr. Ajayi Obe has also put up her hand.
Okay, please, Dr. Ajayi, please go ahead, ma'am.
Hello. Dr. Ogunro, a beautiful presentation and very informative. I see that you used America as the, use them as the signpost. But I just wonder if it's reflective of our own society in Nigeria. I wonder if my generation was the silent generation. And obviously our parents, the independence came, for them. So that was a major thing for them. So our events are actually different from the world. I think we didn't have the internet at the time. So we, if we look at our own events, how do we actually translate the events that happened in Nigeria to how Nigeria is? Our parents were a generation where expectations were, things were good for them. And in our generation, things took a turn. So it's nice to do that work and understanding how Nigeria fits. I know that the younger generation, they're more in tune with the world because of the internet. But it'd be nice to actually see how these things pan out. Second question, what is your, how do you view things in terms of the generation coming behind in transferring those skills, in them being prepared to take on those skills? I mean, I'm in England at the moment, and the truth matters at the end of the day, a lot of these young ones do not do the hours that we did. And they have no plans of doing the hours that we did. How do we maintain the standards? Because I believe at the end of the subsequent generations are going to, it might not be actually well for them in terms of healthcare if the skills are not there. Because keeping up skills is hard work. So just the comments I have.
Okay, Dr. Ogunro, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi-Obi. When it comes to Nigeria, actually looking at the generational characteristics, I can see similar things in Nigeria. We are talking about the baby boomers, and those when you look at the political arena and you look at the workforce, and even the generation, the millennial and the Z generation, they are into social media. Everything now, you talk about social media. They want to do anything, you find it in the social media. So they're actually similar, very similar. And it's now for us to be able to really train our generations and see how we can transfer the training or some of the characteristics of the older generations into them. And this will not be done just by one person. It will start with the home. We know that the characteristics of this generation, always with internet, mobile phones, and all that. You can imagine a father coming into the consulting room with his child, and the doctor is attending to the child, and the father was on phone and asking questions. The daughter looked at the father, found out that the father was on phone, did not pay any attention to what the doctor was saying or anything. So you could see it will start from home. And by the time you now take it worldwide, it's going to be like an individual, training. How many hours are you going to be on social media? There are some nations that have actually reduced the number of hours their children will be on social media or on the internet.
A second question about the generation behind. How prepared do you think they are?
We haven't really prepared them. And the thing is, we shouldn't just you and I, everybody, that calls for every one of us, even in the older generations, that those values that we have, we should start building it into this younger generation, no matter wherever we are.
Okay, thank you, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. I just also make a comment on this. I think the onus lies on on both generations to try and find common ground. Like Dr. rightly said, the way some of us in our generation studied, the hours and everything we put into it, I think they might not be ready to do that. I remember school and the teaching technique and the way the books were just thrown at us and we just had to go and sit down and read it. I think both generations really have to have a common ground. We must be able to let them know the amount of information they need to know and also find ways for them to be able to master this information easier than we did. I guess that's a sacrifice we need to make. So thank you so much, Dr. Ogunro. Is there any other question for us?
Yes, Adeniyi Adetoyosi.
Okay.
And then Dr. Idowu Omolola.
Okay, please let Mr. Adeniyi please take the. Before he takes it, please let me read Dr. Kiari's comments, and it says, it's indeed very important to know the intergenerational differences of perceptions and modes. Thank you so much for bringing this to the discussion table. Brilliantly presented. Thank you, Dr. Ogunro and Kefa. So please, Mr. Adeshina, please, can we have your question? Mr. Adeshina, are you asking a question? He seems to have dropped out.
Okay, there's Dr. Idowu.
Dr. Abida.
Idowu.
Sorry. Dr. Please.
Hello, everyone. Great job, Dr. Ogunro. I really enjoyed that presentation. I actually think what I wanted to say had been alluded to, and that was that we need to think about different ways of teaching. That's essentially what I want to say. We need to now realize that technology is how our youth learn. The generations younger than us, they learn more by technology, and we need to leverage that in the way we teach. Because as Dr. Ajayi, I think, said, they will not spend those hours, and the skills do need to be transferred. So it's a question of how do we take what we have and use it in a way that achieves the same goals. And technology is one way of doing that. I find that the younger generation actually are more, I would say, self-learners than we are. And so as part of the things that we do when we teach now, you have to go scour the internet and find reliable sources of the internet that you can direct them to, because they will rather do that than sit in class with you or use the books that you're trying. So YouTube channels, all these other things are things that you have to go look at, verify that you think they're credible, and pass those resources on. And just many other things. Technology, I think, is the way to go when we are trying to teach the generation that's younger than us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Idowu.
Dr. Idowu, thank you.
Can I just mention one thing?
Yes, please.
The West is driving a lot of this, and I think it's the way forward. But you have to remember, we have the population, we have the material, the actual material. We have patients. And you realize that a lot of the camps, people from the West come over to do the work. They thrive. People go to India, come to Africa because the material is not there. There's a lot of litigation going on. So we have to get a balance. I can get these children doing some of the work. They might prefer the internet, it's true, but they've got to do the actual work and realize that they have it's an advantage. They've got the advantage. So it's just me, just a comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Harriman, I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much. I was just going to check to see if there's a comment. Yes, Florence Nkwogu says that a very interesting presentation and good guide for all trainers and leaders in various situations, homes inclusive. And I believe also that this skills transfer is not only related to medicine, even though many of us on this platform are in the medical field, but also in whomever we are training, whomever we are trying to pass whatever knowledge onto, whether the person is in the house, working in the house, working in the garden, working at work in administration, or even in our different places of worship where we want to teach them things. I now understand that this is how these people think, which Dr. Ogunro has given me a better perspective to the influence of the generation. So I can understand when my sons say, oh, mommy, I prefer to do online lectures than go to the lecture hall. So it's all understandable there. And I'm sure many of us have experienced this. Dr. Professor Ademola Pupola says that it appears that the older generation is the one that must take the responsibility. How best do we get the new generation to do it without them feeling we are too hard on them? So, Dr. Ogunro.
We must be involved when the younger generation get that. We should see it in a way that, like an older generation that is not really involved in all this tech thing, will also get themselves interested in it. And when they see that you are interested in what they are supposed to do, you become friends, and then you learn it together. Like Dr. Derindo said, you find a common ground.
Hello?
Sorry, have you finished?
Spoke earlier on. I said you become friends, and you will be able to, you can even learn some of these technologies that we are talking about. And if you have to have a common ground to it, you must be interested in it as well. And they see it as fun. When they see that you are interested in it, you want to be part of it, you are taking part in this thing, they too will be encouraged.
Thank you very much.
It's not a matter of condemnation, but even when they do it right, you encourage them and you give them credit for it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ido says, by presenting it to them in ways they are more inclined to hear it. And Paul Nwagala says, sounds like compromise to me. So is that compromise?
Well, I think any language you want to call it is okay. The most important thing is to make sure that the skill is transferred. I think one other mistake, well, I won't call it a mistake. One thing we need to remember is that we were also different from our parents, and the ways our parents learned was different. An example is, in those days, a woman can just be handed over to a man. That's the man you're going to marry. And then that's it. But now our generation did not do that. So we were different from our parents before us. It's life. Our children and the generation after us will be different. And we need to find ways, we need to find common ground, because this information has to be passed on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oderinlo. Mr. Dele Salami says, great lecture, thank you. Bridget, I see Bridget here. The name is just Bridget. Very brilliant presentation, very insightful. Thank you, Adu and team. Dr. Kiari says, quite right. That's at Ajayobe. The millennials and Generation X have an advantage Sorry, I think this is cutting off some of what she's written. Okay, good. Have an advantage in fourth industrial revolution. They must leverage on it. We as Generation X have the responsibility to expose them to the opportunities and guide them, but they must take responsibility for their actions and learnings. If you don't mind, Dr. Kiari, can you unmute yourself so that you can explain more about this fourth industrial revolution? We still have just a couple more minutes.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I was just saying the differences in the generational, growth and what they're exposed to. So for the millennials and the Generation Z, they are just building on what their parents actually did, because we all know that our parents did more than what we are doing. We're building on them. And then the younger ones also expect to build upon us, But and the fourth industrial revolution is just about the technology, use of technology, and even talking about space and the metaverse and all that. But as I always say, they have the learnings in their palms now because of the internet. You can learn everything on the phone because of the access and connectivity to the internet. So for us, ours is just to expose them to what the opportunities are and guide them as to how to use it to their advantage rather than to their disadvantage. But at the end of the day, they must take responsibility for their actions and learnings. I mean, they have to do that. They can't just say, oh, because we're internet people, we're not going to learn how to use our hands as skills, surgery, for example, which ophthalmology is a surgical specialty. So you can't rest on the internet, only you have to use your hands. So that's just what I'm talking about, and they must take responsibility.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiari. Okay, if they choose to, Dr. Popola, if they choose to learn cataract surgery from the beginning to the end and want to operate a patient, okay, they may learn it online and then decide they have the skills to operate. So do we have any more questions, any comments?
It might be interesting to hear from the younger ones, the millennials. I think we have quite a few of them on
okay,
the
if you
meeting.
can call out their name if they don't mind. I don't know who the millennials are here. We are the baby boomers. Any of the millennials?
I wouldn't want to call out. I think they should volunteer.
Okay.
Some of the residents are here. Some of my residents are here.
Probably worried about the exams.
No. It won't have anything to do with the exams. Let's hear from you.
Good afternoon, my consultants. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm Abiola Lawal from my Foundation Hospital. Thank you very much, Dr. Guru, for the lecture. It was surprisingly very interesting. When I saw the topic, I thought it was going to be something boring, but I listened to it, and it is so good to know what generation I fall into. And I agree with the opinion that says that the use of technology is very helpful today. It helps us to achieve a lot, to have access to so much information. We don't have to go to the library to pull out like 100 books in order to write a paragraph in our dissertation anymore. The information is at the tip of our fingers. We can access myriads of information online. That is a very good advantage. And I also agree with the fact that hands-on, when it comes to hands-on, we have to put in the work. We can't just get everything from being on social media or getting all the webinars. If we listen to hundreds of webinars, if we don't have the opportunity to get hands-on experience, all those information will actually not help us to be better surgeons and make us skilled surgeons and allow patients to entrust their eyes into our hands. So I agree with the idea of meeting the younger generation in the middle way, halfway, such that both parties can benefit significantly, maximally. The older generations will be surprised at what they can achieve within from the comfort of their offices, and also the younger generation can learn a lot, even from things that we might assume are archaic and old. And so both parties can really benefit a lot that way. Thank you very much for my answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lawal. Is there any other comments? Okay. So Dr. Ogunro, thank you very much once again for this excellent presentation. Okay, yes, you'd like to say something?
Yes, please. Like what Dr. Harima and Dr. Carey mentioned earlier on, and the younger generation, the fourth industrial revolution, and it's already happening. We are talking about the artificial intelligence. All the artificial intelligence, they were developed even from the data that the older generations would have had. And this is where, you know, artificial intelligence, we already have robots doing the surgeries and all that. And it's going to increase and it's going to be perfected in future. So we can see that even in many hospitals, in many institutions, whether hospitals or engineering or whatever, the technology, when it comes to the IT is the in thing now, and it's like the bedrock of any of the industrial revolution that will be coming up. And everyone will have to key into it. So that's what I have to say, that in data collection, in aligning the technology, it is very, very important, because that's what the future generation will be up to now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogunro. And I also want to thank everyone for attending this meeting. I'd like to encourage us to be patient with the younger ones, even as we transfer knowledge to them, now that we understand their way of thinking. And finally, let us remind ourselves that practice does not make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So thank you very much once again. Have a lovely afternoon and what's left of the weekend. God bless. Thank you, Dr. Ogunro. Thank you, Dr. Olufemi, for moderating with me. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.